In this morning's Facebook training, YouTube training live, in fact, we're going to be covering web forms. I'm going to break it down into 4 sections. And as you can see on the page that you're watching this on, there are 4 components to this training. We're going to do some basic stuff, just setting up a really simple web form in your Connectably application. Then we're going to be embedding it onto a website. I'm going to use a WordPress website by way of example. That's what we use. That's what I think the vast majority of Connectables use. But important to mention that our web form code can work on pretty much any website that you can embed code onto. Then we're going to do a second web form where we've got some segmentation options, capturing different levels of interest or different levels of experience so that you can then start filtering leads in different ways. And then I'm just going to show you off the back of that how you might trigger automations in your Connectably system off the back of those responses. There were already some questions in the events page. Amanda asked if this would be a replacement for Gravity Forms and Zapier. We're not going to remove Gravity Forms and Zapier. You can still continue to use those. Gravity Forms is a fantastic web form builder, and you can do various different things off the back of it. But I would imagine that 95% plus of people will just be using Gravity Forms to capture leads via Zapier into Connectably. And if so, you can use this method to replace that. Can you use it in different places? Was another of her questions. Yes, absolutely. You'll be able to do that. And can you delete them once you're done with them? Yes, absolutely. You'll be able to do that as well. So without further ado, let's jump into screen share, and we will go into my Connectably application. You should be able to see that now. Let's come into here. Let's get rid of some of these. Cancel. Okay, so web forms, where are they sat on your Connectably application? They're under settings, as typically most things are. And then web forms are under section 17 of settings. And if you click into there, you've got the option to add new web forms, to see existing web forms, to Amanda, delete existing web forms if you want to get rid of those. And we're just, for our first one, we're just going to simply create a new web form. The web form name won't be seen by users. So this is a sample, simple Connectables demo. Thank you page URL. I'm just going to set this to be connectably.com/ thank you. I'm sure that page exists. Actually, let's get one that does exist. Thank you, First Connections. Let's copy that link address. And then you can actually see one in action. You will also need a link to your privacy policy for GDPR. We'll come on to that in a sec. Now then, the web form fields, we start off with a minimum of having email address in there. If you only have email address, capturing just email address on the form, what the system will do, because we require having first name and last name, if you only have email address as the single field on your form, we will populate the fields first name and last name with first name and last name. So if your business is not particularly interested initially in that contact's details, you can just simply have email address as a form field on there. I think for the most part, client services businesses are comfortable and would prefer to know who they're dealing with. So if we do want to add additional fields onto that form, we just simply click on this plus icon over here. And I'm actually going to add 2 to my form. I'm going to add first name and I'm going to add last name. Now, in terms of the ordering, when we generate the code for this, it will move the email field down to the bottom, so you don't have to do that manually in here. Typically, the way that you will fill in web forms online, you'd have email as the last field that somebody's filling in, so we do that for you. You can set everything except email to be required no if you want to, if you don't want to make things a mandatory field. All I'm going to do for this first simple form is just create this with first name, last name, and email in here. Bearing in mind, you can add any other fields that you want to in your system, or also add radio buttons, checkboxes, etc. into that. We'll do some more of that when we get to the more advanced one. The checkbox description is what the person that's filling this form will see. I give my consent to receive marketing communications from you. Let's put something like that. And then we need to link to our privacy policy. And this will link on that privacy settings description. You'll see that in a moment. Policy. Right, okay, so that's a required field as well from a GDPR perspective. So our only must-have fields are email address and GDPR consent checkbox. Now then, when somebody fills in this form, we might want to tag and segment them. So in this instance, I'm just going to set my customer status to be lead, but you could have, if it's something that's specific to an interest area, you could add other tags in here using that plus button, or get rid of them using that minus icon there. So you can tag them multiply when they fill that in. So that's our web form. That's our really simple web form with email, first name, last name in there. When I save that, you can see that that's put that in here. And if I come to web form code, although this looks a little bit codey, don't be confused by it. All we need to do with this is just select it, copy it, and then jump over into our page that we want to add that on. Just going to add a new page on my WordPress website here. And this is sample Connectables web form. If your WordPress website is updated to, I think it's version 5s and above, you'll get this kind of layout builder for them. If not, then follow the instructions for your theme as to how you would add a custom HTML element or add a form element to it, or give the code to your web designer and let them do this part. I'm going to add a custom HTML element, paste that form code in there. As you can see, without being a coder, you can see here the last form element before I get to the consent bit is the email field. Let's save that and we'll go and preview it. And as you can see, this is our simple form. It takes the styling settings of your website. It comes from a file called style.css. If you're not familiar with that, or you are uncomfortable about amending that for different styling settings, hire yourself a web designer from Upwork or Fiverr or somewhere like that, and get them to update your styling settings so that your web form looks and feels as you would want it to do so. Any website theme that uses the Bootstrap, it's called, styling structure and build structure should be okay with these basic form settings. There's nothing that we're doing within our form code that's anything other than what other systems use for their web form codes. So there's nothing new that anybody should really need to develop. But if your website theme doesn't have styling settings for forms, you may just want to hire a web designer to do that for you. I'm just going to fill this in. Connectables test first. Connectables test last test at mailinator.com. Submit that form, and that has taken me to my thank you page. Always tell somebody what to expect next when you take them to a thank you page. And if I jump back into Connectably, and if I go to contact, Connectables test first, Connectables test last, you can see that that contact is in there with the information that we've asked for: email, first name, last name. And if I scroll down here, customer status of lead, that was the tag that I was applying to somebody in there. Okay, so we've done steps 1 and 2. We've built a simple web form. We've embedded that on our website. Let's go and do a more complex form. In fact, we might just come back and complex, comprehensive form is probably the word to use on this. Back into section 17. I'm just going to edit that same form so we don't have to repeat lots of what we were asking for before. And this time, I'm going to do some segmentation. So I'm going to add some additional fields. This time, I'm going to ask for the company. I'm also going to ask them for their phone number. Bearing in mind, with forms that you create, the more fields that you put on there, the less likely it is that somebody will fill it in. That being, and that's a really common stat that's banded around internet circles. Bearing in mind the business that we're all in of client services, however, whilst your form submissions might drop with more fields that you ask for, the quality of those leads when somebody fills in a more comprehensive form will be so much better. So I have a, should we say, a scathing belief that having limited numbers of fields on your forms really impacts you and your business. I would rather have one really good quality lead than say 8 or 10 poorer quality ones that aren't really going to go anywhere with you. That's just my my view on these things. So in this one, we're asking for a little bit more company and phone number, and also in here we're going to create a radio button to ask them for their experience. And I've already created some tags on my system. We're going to segment this lead by their experience. Have they got no experience whatsoever? They're a beginner. Have they got some but need some more guidance? I'm just going to copy these. So bearing in mind, we're running a client services business, perhaps a coaching business here, an advice business, that kind of thing. And we're just trying to segment that lead as it comes in. You might reword this for the context of your business, but what we want to do is filter off these different people into different places. You can imagine your follow-up for somebody that is a beginner would be really quite different to somebody who has experience. Somebody with experience, possibly wanting some fine-tuning and some expertise, some consulting, my follow-up might be just to get them to go to a meeting booking, an appointment booking with me via Connectably so that I can get on the phone with them. A beginner, I might want to put them into more of a automation funnel, email marketing, where they, if they do bubble up to the surface as they go through something and buy maybe an entry-level product from me, that's perhaps a better route. I'm going to give you the example of a beginner as we build this out. Okay, so our radio name is what's your level of experience? So we're going to ask that on the form. Our first option is none. I'm a beginner. And as I come down here into, you can see how many tags I've got on our demo system here. Option tag, none, I'm a beginner. Add a radio option. Our middle one is some, but need some guidance. Customer status. Customer experience. Experience, some, but need some guidance. Add a radio option. Experience but need fine-tuning and expert help. Let's just tag that. So we're going to tag them depending on their response with one of those entries. So let's, I'm not going to add any further tags there. I'm just going to save that web form there. And if I come back to web forms and come back into my web form code for this demo, you can see there's a lot more code in there this time. I'm going into the details of it, but let's come back into our web form page on our website. Paste over the web form code that was in there before. Go back into preview. Now we can see that we've got a bit more insight in there. Connectably, connectable first, connectable last, company, test co, phone number. I'm a beginner. I'm going to click on that. I'm not going to hit submit yet, because what you'll want to think about in your Connectably application is an automation built on this. So I'm going to come into section 7, automations. I'm going to add an automation into it. Our trigger is going to be a tag applied. And our start point for this is going to be none. I don't have any experience. I'm a complete beginner. That's my start point for this. Our exit might be maybe booked a call. Let me just put this in here. So our exit point, imagine that tag applied is booked a call or something like that, or tag them in a different way. That would pull them out of here. But in between, I can put some other automation elements in here of sending different emails. Delay, I'm going to put so much in here. We might cover that on another session. Apply a tag, send an email. So I've got 2 emails within that automation for people who told me that they're a beginner when they fill that in. Okay, so I've now got my automation that goes with that. Not the most exciting automation, but when this form, this live form, gets filled in, where's their email address? Beginner. I'm just going to copy Connectable first so we can find this person. Let's put them into the system. They're now in there. If I jump back into Connectably, Connectable first, Connectable last. Beginner@mailinator.com is in there. They don't have any experience. They're a beginner. Customer status of lead. So you remember I had the 3 options. I've now got them segmented with that. I can also come back into my contacts list and I can search for people who have that level of experience. Let's look for them in here. Source, customer status. I really do need to clean this up a little bit. None, a beginner. So I'm looking for people with that tag. And there's that person in there. I can see all of my leads that that meet that. And if I jump over into Mailinator, this person, if Mailinator is working for me, what's this? Beginner@Mailinator, beginner. We've got an email that's gone through to them. Look how exciting that is. So we've covered setting up a simple web form. We've covered embedding a web form on your website. We've covered some segmentation options for doing a little bit more with your web form. We've triggered an automation from the response. That's our 4 things that we wanted to cover on today's